This is my TDV8 Range Rover that I paid less than £3,000 for. And if you've been following the videos I've done on this truck, you'll be aware that it's given me to run around a little bit on various lights that have come up on the dash. Mainly a gearbox fault that I've been unable to solve. However, I'm pleased to report that that fault has now been fixed and the Range Rover is perfect. No lights on the dash. It is ideal, but it hasn't been straightforward. I've been at the mercy of so-called specialists for a while, and in the end, I've had to find my own way through it. But more on that in a little bit. Also, I want to touch on something else. This YouTube bandwagon of slagging off Range Rovers at the moment. It's not something I'm into, but I'm going to touch on that. However, it is incredibly cold today, so let's continue this video inside the Range Rover with some heated seats and a heated steering wheel. Okay, so you're joining me behind the wheel of the Range Rover out on the road. So let's go through everything that has happened with this Range Rover. If you've been following the videos I've done on this truck so far, you'll be aware that I bought it very, very cheap. I didn't intend to buy it, but it was such a lovely old thing and it seemed so genuine that I felt it just deserved another chance. So I gave less than £3,000 for this Range Rover. Anyway, it had various lights on the dash, and over the course of the last 2 or 3 videos, I've been working my way through them and sorting it out. But one light did persist, and that was a gearbox warning light. Now, I think, in retrospect, I think I went about sorting that issue out the wrong way. I think I tried to be too clever. I changed various components on the transfer box, little shift modules, things like that, and I spent quite a bit of money doing it, to be fair, and none of it worked. So I did something which I would never normally do, and I put myself in the way of a Land Rover specialist. Now, the first one I used was pretty much useless off the bat. He gave me some advice, essentially, to take everything apart and chase a broken wire in the center console, which I did, but I didn't find anything. I decided not to go any further with that specialist, in inverted commas, based on that poor advice and also the amount he billed me for that advice, but coupled with a few reviews that I read about him. I then went to another specialist. Now, initially, I should say, when I bought this thing, I thought I'd be okay because I know a couple of guys locally who know everything about Range Rovers, really, really keen guys who I get on with well, and I thought they would no doubt be able to figure out what the issue is with this truck and help me sort it out. Sadly, that didn't come to fruition. Partly because they are incredibly busy all the time, and partly because it is a bit of a phantom issue, or it was a bit of a phantom issue. So this isn't in any way a reflection on those two chaps. They're not the specialists I'm referring to. So I went to another specialist, a Land Rover specialist. I put the vehicle in with him. He scanned it with his specific Land Rover tool, checked everything over, and his advice was to change the transfer case control module, the TCCM, which is a common thing on these old Range Rovers. I had already checked that. There was no corrosion and grot inside there. Everything seemed to check out and it looked good. So I didn't think that was the issue, but he assured me that his specific computer had read the codes on the vehicle, and there were indeed a lot of codes related to the TCCM. So he said to me, do you want to change that? I can put a second-hand unit in there. In fairness, he did offer me a second-hand unit, and it'd be something like £80 or £100. But I said to him, you know, if you're sure that's the issue, let's not mess about. Let's put a brand new one in from Land Rover, because whether I keep this Range Rover or whether I sell it, I really don't want the same issue to recur in the future. So I said, put a brand new one in from Land Rover if you can assure me that that is the fault. And he said, yep, I can give you my assurance that is the fault. However, once we've bought the part and fitted it, that's it. So I thought, okay, this guy is a specialist. Let's go with what he said. So he's bought the TCCM from Land Rover and fitted it. Now, I won't go into much more detail than that, but I will tell you the total bill from that chap was nearly £700. And when I tell you that didn't solve a damn thing, I mean it. Now, his recourse there, we didn't have a falling out about it at all because, you know, we're all grown-ups. I'm over 21. I did say to him on his advice, you know, if that's what you think will sort it, go ahead and do it. Hands up in the air, go for it. It didn't sort it, so I'm not gonna chase after the guy and give him grief about it. It didn't work. It's a shame. I paid his bill. I took the Range Rover away, and I just won't use him again. But that doesn't change the fact that although I paid very little for this Range Rover in the first place, I am now, with all the stuff I'd done beforehand, I'd spent over £1,000 chasing after this gearbox issue. So I was thinking to myself, well, what can I do? I've changed everything logical that could be causing this issue, because the vehicle was driving absolutely fine, by the way. I was driving this Range Rover with the gearbox warning light on. It's only an amber warning. I was driving it. I was using it as a tow vehicle. When we had snow, I was using it as my snow truck. I was really enjoying this thing. It was perfect. The only thing that didn't work was the terrain response knob in the middle. When you turn that, the terrain response options weren't coming up. It was just saying unavailable. So it was obviously a transfer case issue, not an actual gearbox fault, as the binnacle would have you believe. So I was using it and it was fine. So I thought to myself, well, what can I do? I've changed all the bits that I think could relate to that system, the terrain response issue, and I couldn't come up with any fresh ideas. So I just went back to the old-fashioned ways, and I thought, well, what would we do on any other vehicle? I found a breaker, I'm going to say a local breaker. They were within about an hour and a half of me, who just break Range Rovers. They were very well rated, so I phoned them, explained what I think I wanted, a new transfer box as an entirety with everything on it, a known good unit off a vehicle that had come in with another fault. The chap I spoke to said, that's fine, we've got one in, I'll be breaking it shortly. So long story short, I gave him £250 for a whole transfer case, okay, a whole transfer box off that Range Rover. Now this one's a 2010 with 134,000 miles on it. I believe the transfer box I bought was off a 2010 TDV8, same as this, and I think it had something like 115,000 miles or something like that. It wasn't, point is, it wasn't a super high mileage vehicle it came off. Known good unit. So I bought this second-hand transfer box, and that was only £250. So already I'm thinking, if this works, I've made a right mug of myself here. I've spent £1,000 chasing after an issue to no avail. I've now chucked another 250 quid at it. Let's see if that sorts it. Well, lo and behold, the new transfer box with all the bits and pieces already attached that I'd changed for brand new, that has solved the issue, and this Range Rover is absolutely flawless. Now what I will say is, changing that transfer box was a bit of a fiddle. So I had my friend and tame mechanic come over, and he helped me change that transfer box. Now, of course, to change the transfer box, the easiest thing to do on this TDV8 is to take the exhaust off. Now, in England, I'm not sure if you're aware, but in England, it might be the same elsewhere in the world, there is a law that states if you remove the exhaust from a V8 engined vehicle to do any work to it whatsoever, if you remove that exhaust, you have to, by law, start the engine to see what it would sound like without an exhaust. And I don't like to break the law, so of course I started the engine, and here's what she sounds like with no exhaust. Okay, so where does that leave us with the Range Rover? At the moment, everything is completely sorted. There are no lights on the dash. It is absolutely flawless, and I'm really enjoying using it. Now, I will say, to those of you watching this who've got in touch with me, there are a few people who've sent me messages about potentially purchasing this L322 once it's finished. I have tried to get back to all of you as best I can, and I'll say the same here as what I've said to everyone else. As soon as it's ready and I'm convinced there are no more faults with it, it will probably be offered for sale. I, however, am really enjoying being back behind the wheel of an L322, so I'm not particularly enthused about selling it ever so quickly. I know it doesn't sound great for a car dealer, but at the moment I'm just really enjoying it. I've been using this a lot since I've had it. As I said, even with the gearbox light on, I was using it, but certainly since that's gone, it's just that much more enjoyable just to use it. Now, we've had a lot of cold weather. I've used it in the snow and also in some really slippery mud. Where I store my car transport trailer is essentially a swamp at this time of year. Now, I had to get it quickly yesterday for a car that had to go to MOT, which I didn't want to drive on the road for various reasons. So I took the Range Rover in completely standard form. All it's got are those cross-climate tyres, which aren't a mud tyre, they're just a general tyre, as you probably know. I just put the suspension in off-road suspension mode, and I went down into this absolute, what I can best describe as a quagmire of a field, and the Range Rover didn't miss a beat. Didn't slip at all, didn't offer to get stuck, and that is why things like this are just so useful and so great to have around, especially in these horrible winter months. So I'm not particularly keen on selling the car, I'm just really enjoying it. But that does bring me to my next point. I've been a Range Rover fan for a long time. I've had a few L322s, and my dad, for instance, he's a big Range Rover fan, so ever since I was a kid he's had Range Rovers, and it's kind of in my blood, I guess, which is what's leading me on to this next point. I've noticed a lot of people on YouTube lately jumping on this bandwagon of going out and buying a Range Rover. Generally it's an L322, but sometimes these days it's an L405 because they're becoming cheap now. But either way, people going out and buying a Range Rover, a cheap Range Rover, something that was expensive in the first place, so they're now giving 5, 10, 15% of the car's original value, and then making a YouTube video pretending to be incredibly surprised about all the things wrong with it and making a big song and dance and drama about it. And I don't get it. Like, I do get people want to get clicks on YouTube about whatever they're making videos on, but realistically, come on. If you're going out and buying what was a luxury vehicle 10, 15 years ago and giving a fraction of its value, can you really be surprised if there are a few lights on the dash and things go wrong? And also, anyone who says, you know, Land Rovers, they're always throwing lights and going wrong, it's a well-established fact. You're not breaking new ground by saying this on YouTube. So I honestly think that there needs to be someone to give the other side of the argument, and that's what I hope I'm going to do now. If you can be bothered to do the work that these things require, as in if you want to go out and buy a cheap Range Rover, do it. There are loads out there. There are literally hundreds for sale all the time, and they are not expensive because a lot of people are scared of them, and also the high tax, etc. But still, if you want to go and buy one, go and do it. Because if you really want to use that vehicle, make the effort to fix it. Do what the vehicle needs, and I promise you, you will have one of the best vehicles on the road. Take this one as an example. This isn't anything special. This is just a normal TDV8 Vogue, okay? So it's not a Westminster or anything fancy like that. It's just a basic cooking Vogue. And it is absolutely phenomenal. I've had to put some time and effort into it. Now, I admitted earlier, I went down the wrong route and spent way more than I needed to with this initially. But the fact of the matter is, it's now sorted, and it is such a vehicle. These things, in my opinion at least, they offer so much bang for buck. It's one of the best. If I could only have one vehicle for the rest of my life, it would most likely be a TDV8 L322. It just would. They're amazing vehicles. So anyway, if you want to buy a Range Rover, just be aware that you're going to have to spend money and time making it right. And also, just because I've got rid of this gearbox light and this one is currently without any faults, does that mean I'm saying I believe this thing is now going to be sorted for the rest of days? Absolutely not. I can make a bet with you now that within the next 10,000 miles, there will almost certainly be some more lights coming on, because that's the nature of not just old Land Rovers, but old vehicles in general. They do go wrong, they do throw lights, and they do come up with issues. It's not a surprise, but maybe it comes across in this video. That's why I'm a little bit frustrated with all these videos I'm seeing of people buying an old Range Rover and then making video after video about head in hands. Oh, there's something gone wrong with it. Oh, is it fixable? Anything is fixable if you want it to be. It's just how much you want to throw at it. And also, you know what you're getting into when you buy one of these things. So come on, let's have a bit of common sense. Obviously, they are not going to be brand new vehicles. I don't know what this thing was when it left Land Rover in 2010, but I'd be very surprised if it was much less than 60 or 70,000 pounds even then. I gave less than 3 grand for it. So imagine me now doing a head in hands video. Oh, something else has gone wrong with the Range Rover. Oh, I can't believe it. It just wouldn't happen, would it? I think, to put it in simple terms, and in the terms of the part of the world I'm from and the sort of blokes I hang out with, man up, get your spanners out and fix it. Anyway, I don't want to keep banging that drum because it's probably coming across a little bit negative, and that's one thing I never ever want to do on this channel, is give negative vibes about anything. I think I'm just a little bit defensive of old Range Rovers, especially L322s, because they are, as I've said just now, in my opinion, one of the best bang for buck vehicles you can buy if you're willing to spend the money on parts and the tax and a bit of getting a few grey hairs, let's say. So now that I've given you the rundown on this Range Rover and what I've had to do to make it as good as can be, I'm going to shoot back to the workshop now. I'll give you a little bit of a walk around as a final end piece to this video, let's say, but it's not the end of this vehicle. There are a few things I'd like to do to bring it into 2025 and make it as modern as it can be sympathetically, but I'll talk you through those bits as soon as we get back to the workshop. So for now, I'm going to enjoy the heated seats and air ride luxury of my Range Rover on the way back to the workshop. So there you have it. That is where we are with the Range Rover. I did mention in that video, I'm in two minds whether to keep this thing or sell it. I would love to keep it because to me it is perfection. But I have got a few people, a few of you guys watching these videos actually, who are keen to buy this thing. So it may end up being sold, but at the moment I really do want to keep it. Now, regardless, there's something else I mentioned. I want to do one modification to this vehicle to bring it into 2025, and that is to do with the entertainment system. There's nothing wrong with this at all, but in a perfect world, I would like to have a CarPlay system, and that is where today's video sponsor comes in. IDCORE have been kind enough to send me one of their units. Now, this is not a head unit as such. This is a kit that basically means you take the existing head unit out of the Range Rover, open it up, and you put in a chip from this IDCORE kit into the existing head unit, and that means it turns what is already in the Range Rover looking completely factory into a modern CarPlay enabled unit. Now that means I can take calls on the go, I can use my phone to play music, etc., all without actually physically touching my phone and breaking the law. So thank you very much IDCORE for sending this. I will get this fitted in a video coming soon, but for now I think I've spoken enough in this video. I just want to give you a few shots of the Range Rover before we finish. Now, it is absolutely filthy because, as I mentioned several times, I've been using this a lot in snow, in mud, in fine weather. I've been going up and down motorways in it. I've been towing trailers with it. It has been an absolute workhorse while it's been here, and hence it is filthy, but that, in my opinion, is how a countryside Range Rover should be. So as always, thank you ever so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it and you're not already subscribed, why not consider doing so? Just hit the button below, it's totally free, and you'll see more videos like this as and when they come out. But until next time, thank you ever so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.